The Valarian research vessel hung silent in the infinite darkness of space. Its hull dark except for the faint emergency lights that cast everything in a pale blue glow. Captain Arya stood on the observation deck and stared out at the endless void. Her scaled features rigid with the weight of impossible decisions. The great ship that had once been the pride of the Valarian Collective now felt like a coffin slowly drifting through the abyss. 3 weeks had passed since the catastrophic ion drive failure. 3 weeks of rationing, of prayers to ancient gods most of her crew no longer believed in, and of watching the hope drain from the eyes of 400 souls who depended on her to lead them home. The spatial anomaly had come without warning, a distortion in space that their instruments had failed to detect until it was far too late. The ship had passed through the phenomenon, and the drive had simply stopped responding to any command or override sequence. Kess approached the captain with slow, measured steps, his antennae drooping in a way that told Arya everything she needed to know before he spoke. The science officer looked exhausted, his normally bright eyes now dull with fatigue. The auxiliary power grid is declining faster than we anticipated, Captain, Kess said, his voice barely above a whisper. We may have only 10 days of full life support remaining. Arya did not respond immediately. She simply continued looking out at the stars, wondering if anyone out there knew they existed, if anyone had heard their calls for help. But the communications from outside the nearest colonies would take weeks to arrive. And they did not have weeks. How much time until food becomes critical? She asked, without turning around. 12 days. Captain Kess replied, I have recalculated 3 times to be certain. The numbers do not change no matter what mathematical approach we use. The captain finally turned to face her science officer. Fear flickered in her eyes for just a moment before her training reasserted itself and she locked away the emotion. She had learned long ago that fear was a luxury leaders could not afford. Though it never truly went away. I want every non-essential system powered down, Arya commanded. We conserve everything, and we extend our timeline. We will make it to the inhabited zones. But Captain, Kess began to protest. We have calculated that without a working drive, the nearest system is 2 months away at minimum drift speed. Our supplies will not last. I know the mathematics, Kess, Arya said, her voice sharp but not unkind. I know them as well as you do, perhaps better. But what I also know is that despair is a poison that spreads faster than any disease. We will find hope even in the darkness. She moved toward the communication station, where Junior Officer Mina was hunched over the controls, her mandibles clicking nervously. Every hour she tried to boost their distress signal, attempted new frequencies, new languages, new patterns that might reach someone, anyone who could help. But every hour returned only silence. Mina, what is the status of our beacon? Arya asked. The same as yesterday, Captain, Mina replied without looking up. We are broadcasting on all known frequencies used by the major civilizations. Klingon, Valarian, Zerithian, Temporal Federation. All of them nothing but silence returning. To us, Arya moved behind the young officer and placed a hand on her shoulder. The gesture was meant to comfort, but it felt hollow even to the captain herself. How could she offer comfort when she had no comfort to give? Continue expanding the frequency range. Arya ordered try the theoretical spectrums as well, the ones that academics argue about in distant universities. Send it all out there. Let the entire cosmos know we exist and that we need help. But Captain, Mina said, her voice uncertain, those theoretical frequencies are unproven. We have no data that any species uses them. Then perhaps, Arya said slowly, we reach someone that the rest of the galaxy has never reached. Perhaps we call out in a voice that only one civilization can hear. Then perhaps, just perhaps, that civilization will answer over the next hours. Mina worked alongside Kess to reprogram the distress beacon. They modified the transmission patterns, added new frequencies, created signals based on theoretical wave patterns that existed only in academic papers and theoretical physics models. The beacon grew more powerful, more desperate, reaching out into the black with everything the ship could spare. Throughout the vessel, the crew felt the slow power down of non-essential systems. The lights dimmed across entire sections. The artificial gravity weakened slightly, causing everything to feel a little lighter, a little more temporary. Many of the crew gathered in the communal spaces, speaking in low voices about home, about families they might never see again, about the universe that had proven so vast and so indifferent to their suffering. Captain Arya spent her time reviewing reports and logs from the moment of the anomaly, looking for something she might have missed, some calculation that was wrong, some possibility that she had overlooked. But there was nothing. The universe had been cruel and random, striking them down for no reason other than chance and proximity. She thought of the distant human territories that she had read about in intelligence reports. Humans were an interesting species, violent and unpredictable, but also strangely compassionate in ways that often baffled the older civilizations. They helped each other. They sacrificed for strangers. This seemed wasteful to Valarian philosophy, yet humans thrived with such tendencies. But the human worlds were even farther away than the inhabited zones, lost in their own region of space, far from where the Valarian collective explored. Most ships never went that far. No one went that far because it was not strategic, not profitable, not necessary. Yet Arya found her thoughts drifting to those distant human ships. Sometimes she wondered what those strange, sentimental creatures would do if they found a distress call. If they truly helped without calculation of benefit, then perhaps no. She told herself such thoughts were dangerous. They bred false hope, and false hope was worse than no hope at all. The standard day cycle ended, and the reduced lighting shifted to night mode across the ship. Arya retired to her quarters. She sat in the darkness and allowed herself one moment of fear, one moment of doubt, one moment where she was not the captain, but simply a being who knew that death was coming for her and her crew. Then she stood, composed herself, and prepared to face another day of impossible decisions in the darkness. The USEC Vanguard cut through the darkness of space with purpose and precision, her sleek hull catching the distant light of stars as she moved steadily through her patrol route. The ship was a marvel of human engineering, built with the latest drives and weapons, but more importantly built with the philosophy that humanity should explore, discover, and help where it could. Captain John Hayes stood on the bridge with his hands clasped behind his back, a habit that reminded his crew he was thinking deeply about something. The Deep Space Patrol had been routine for 6 months, pushing human exploratory boundaries, further into the unknown regions away from established colonies and trade routes. Few ships volunteered for this kind of work. The long isolation, the danger of equipment failure far from help, and the psychological strain of being so completely alone in the universe made it challenging work. But Captain Hayes believed in it. He believed that humanity needed to expand its horizons and understand its place in the wider galaxy. Lieutenant Amanda Cross sat at the communication station, a young officer with sharp instincts and even sharper mind for patterns. She had been the first to notice something unusual in the background radiation signals, a pattern that did not match the standard cosmic noise that filled deep space. Captain, I am picking up something on the sensors, Amanda called out, her fingers flying across her console, working on isolating the signature. Now Hayes moved immediately to her station, leaning over to view the data. They had protocols for this, procedures for investigating anomalies, but out here, so far from any official support. The captain knew that his crew had to be smart and cautious at the same time. What are we looking at? Cross, he asked in his calm command voice. It appears to be a distress signal, Captain, but it is unusual. The frequencies are not standard. They do not match any known civilization that we have encountered. Hayes felt a small jolt run through him. They had not made first contact with any new species in months, and the possibility always carried both excitement and danger. He glanced around the bridge at his officers. "Get me full spectrum analysis." He ordered and put it on the main display. As the data filled the screen, a picture began to emerge: a large vessel, clearly damaged and running on minimal power. A ship that was broadcasting in multiple frequencies, some of them unusual, some of them theoretical constructs that Hayes recognized from his own science training. Someone on that ship was desperate, smart enough to try every possibility. Commander Kevin Rodriguez, the tactical officer, immediately began raising concerns. The veteran military mind saw danger in unknown situations. "Captain, we do not know what this is." Rodriguez said, his voice steady but firm. "It could be a trap. It could be a hostile vessel waiting for us to come close. Any number of scenarios. This is deep space. We should report to command and wait for orders." Steven Chun, the alien relations specialist, stood quickly from his station. His voice carried the weight of someone who had studied countless first contact scenarios. "With respect, Commander, distress signals are universally understood as calls for help. This vessel is in danger, whether that danger comes from mechanical failure or other causes. The principle remains the same: sentient beings need our assistance, but we do not know what we are dealing with." Rodriguez countered, "We could be endangering this entire crew." Captain Hayes listened to both arguments while his mind processed the data before him. The decision fell to him, as all critical decisions did. He was the one responsible for the safety of his 300 crew members, but he was also the one responsible for upholding the values that made humanity worth being. He thought of his own family, scattered across human colonies and settlements. He thought of his daughter serving as a doctor on Europa Station. He thought about what values he had tried to teach her. "Sir," Amanda said hesitantly, "the signal is weakening. I believe their power generation is continuing to fail." Hayes made his decision. That moment when doubt had to be set aside and action had to be taken set a course toward that signal. He ordered all crew to yellow alert. "Prepare for possible first contact. Send them a message on all frequencies. Tell them we are coming to help." "But Captain," Rodriguez began. "That is an order, Commander," Hayes said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "We are going to investigate and we are going to offer assistance. We do not leave sentient beings in danger. If we have the power to help them, this is who we are as a species." The bridge erupted into controlled activity as officers began executing orders. Amanda sent out the message in multiple languages and formats, carefully crafted to convey peaceful intent and immediate assistance. The helm officer adjusted course, pointing the Vanguard toward the coordinates of the distress signal. The engineering team was notified to prepare for emergency. Assistance Operations Dr. Chun approached the captain with approval in his eyes. Though he was tactful enough not to say so directly, the message has been recorded and is being broadcast. Dr. Chun reported, "The response will take time given the distance, but they should know help is coming." Hayes nodded, his mind already calculating the distances and times involved. The journey would take them 3 weeks to reach the distressed vessel, and during those 3 weeks, they would be out of communication range with human command, too far away to receive orders or guidance. This was the burden of being a ship captain in deep space. You made decisions alone, knowing that your commanders would not know about them until weeks or months had passed. By then, the outcome would already be determined. Lives would be saved or lost based on the choices made in isolation. Rodriguez approached the captain with controlled respect, his military bearings still rigid, but his antagonism fading into acceptance. "You understand that command may view this unfavorably?" The commander said quietly, "I do." Hayes replied, "I understand that we are disobeying implicit orders by going to investigate an unknown vessel far from our assigned patrol route. I understand that if something goes wrong, the responsibility falls on me. But Commander, I also understand that there are people out there dying right now, and if we have the power to help them, then not helping them would be a far greater failure than any official reprimand could represent. Rodriguez nodded slowly, accepting the captain's logic, even if his military training preferred the safer option of following protocol. Then we had better do this right. Captain, the commander said, I will make sure our weapon systems and defensive capabilities are at peak readiness, and I will make sure our people are ready for whatever we find out there. Hayes placed a hand on Rodriguez's shoulder in gratitude. The commander's acceptance of the decision was important. More than that, it meant the crew would follow this choice with full dedication rather than reluctant compliance. The Vanguard adjusted its course and increased to maximum safe velocity, leaving the familiar patrol route behind and heading into the unknown. The crew worked with quiet efficiency, each officer understanding the gravity of what had been decided. A small human ship was racing toward danger to help beings they had never met, asking nothing in return except the knowledge that they had done the right thing in the deep cold of space. Hope was moving toward despair for the first time in weeks. The vastness of space seemed infinite as the two vessels drew close to each other. The Vanguard slowed to a cautious approach while maintaining safe distance from the disabled alien ship on the bridge of the human vessel. Every eye was fixed on the forward screens, watching as the Valarian vessel came into clear view. The ship was massive, far larger than the Vanguard, built with a design philosophy completely different from human engineering, where humans favored sleek and efficient designs. The Valarian ship was all sweeping curves and geometric patterns that seemed to serve purposes beyond simple function. It was also clearly in distress, with sections of the hull dark and cold, structural damage visible even from great distance. Captain Hayes studied the vessel carefully, noting every detail that might tell him about the beings inside. The sheer size meant there had to be significant crew populations, likely hundreds of individuals who were counting on rescue. Dr. Chun worked frantically at his communication station, trying every protocol and linguistic approach he could devise to establish peaceful dialogue with the alien vessel. The response came not from any communication equipment, but from the sudden brightening of weapon systems visible on the Valarian ship. They have activated defensive systems, Rodriguez announced, his hand moving instinctively toward the weapons controls. Hold your fire, Hayes commanded sharply. They are frightened people who have been alone and in danger for weeks. A defensive response is completely understandable, Dr. Chun. Can you get through to them? I am trying, sir, Chun replied, his voice tight with concentration. I am using mathematical principles as a base language, something that should be universally understood by any technological civilization. The tense moments stretched out as both ships faced each other, neither one certain of the other's intentions. The Valarian ship was wounded and desperate, while the human ship was unknown and potentially threatening to them on the Vanguard. The crew held their breath, waiting to see if first contact would begin with violence or dialogue. Then, a signal came through on Chun's console. The words did not come in any human language, but the doctor's training and the ship's translation systems began working to decode the message, slowly at first. Then, with increasing clarity, they are asking who we are, Chun reported. They are demanding to know our intentions. They are scared. Tell them we are here to help. Hayes said immediately, send that message, repeating it on all channels. Tell them we mean no harm and that we have come in response to their distress. Call for 48 hours. The two ships maintained their distance while communication continued slowly, painstakingly. The Valarian crew was cautious for good reason, trusting the wrong alien species could mean death. The humans had to prove repeatedly and consistently that they meant no harm and that help was genuinely being offered without expectation of payment or future obligation. Captain Arya received confirmation from her science team that the approaching ship's weapons remained inactive, that their communications continued to offer assistance, that nothing about their behavior suggested hostile intent. She faced the weight of another impossible decision. Should she trust these unknown beings? Should she allow them close enough to attempt repairs? But her options had narrowed to almost nothing. The Vanguard represented the only hope of survival. Her crew was dying slowly on a ship with failing life support. Her people had hours left before desperation would force her to try something dangerous. She could not afford to refuse help, even if it came with unknown risks. Dr. Chun finally managed to establish a clearer communication channel with the Valerian ship. The alien captain's voice came through translated into human speech, and it was weary, ancient, and full of hope and fear intermingled. I am Captain Arya of the Valerian Collective. If you are truly here to help us, then I am placing my people under your judgment. The alien captain said. The words seemed to cost her something emotional, though. The translation could not capture the full weight of it. We are the USEC Vanguard of the Human Exploration Fleet. Hayes responded, making sure his voice was calm and reassuring. I am Captain John Hayes. My crew and I are here to assist you in any way that we can. We ask nothing in return. We help because it is the right thing to do, even through the translation system. Something seemed to break in the alien captain's response, a moment of surprised disbelief, as if she had heard something impossible, something that did not align with her understanding of how advanced civilizations treated each other. The repairs began with careful coordination between both crews. Smaller human shuttle vessels approached the damaged Valerian ship, while Chun worked continuously with their science and engineering teams to understand what needed to be done. The human crew was impressed by the science and engineering teams to understand what needed to be done. The human crew was impressed by the sophistication of the alien technology, but also by its vulnerability in this particular damage. The ion drive required precision repairs that would take careful work and tremendous focus. Captain Arya brought a small delegation aboard the Vanguard for the first in-person meeting. The moment was historic, though neither species fully realized it yet. The Valerian captain stood on the human bridge and looked at these strange, smooth-skinned creatures who had arrived without being asked and offered help without demanding anything. In return, you must want something, Arya said directly, her expression showing skepticism that was entirely understandable. It seems illogical to help a stranger species without expectation of benefit or advantage. In human philosophy, we believe that the right thing to do is help those in danger, regardless of whether we receive anything in return. Hayes explained simply, we understand that the galaxy is large and cold and indifferent. Sometimes, the only warmth that exists is what we create by helping each other. Arya processed this concept, turning it over in her mind, testing it for hidden meanings or concealed demands, but finding none. It contradicted everything she knew about how power and resources worked in a civilized galaxy. Yet here, it was happening right before her. Your people must be very naive, she said, and though the translator rendered it as observation, it was not entirely unkind or very hopeful. Hayes replied with a slight smile as the repairs continued. More Valerian crew members witnessed human sacrifice firsthand. Lieutenant Brandon Cole led teams of human engineers who worked in the harsh radiation environment around the damaged drive systems, taking risks that no Valerian engineer would consider necessary. The humans seemed to view the danger not as something to be avoided, but as something to be managed and overcome in order to accomplish the mission. One human specialist named Patrick Marcus suffered a serious injury when a piece of structural debris tore through his environmental suit. The accident happened during a critical repair sequence, and for a moment, it seemed he would have to be evacuated, but Dr. Lavra Mitchell aboard the Vanguard made the decision to keep him working under a temporary field medical protocol while he guided them through the final connections. He's risking his life for us, Cass observed, watching the human bleeding but still focused on the work. He's injured and suffering, but he continues forward. Yes, Arya replied, understanding dawning in her expression. This is what they do. They help regardless of cost to themselves. This is their nature. That night, after Marcus had been brought aboard the Vanguard for emergency medical treatment, and after the Valarian drive had finally been brought to partial power status, Arya and Hayes stood together looking out at the vast darkness of space. "Your people will not forget this," Arya said quietly. "Your civilization will not forget what you have done for UC. Hope that is true." Hayes replied, "I hope that this encounter shows that different beings can work together, can trust each other, can choose compassion over conflict in the darkness of deep space. A new understanding was being born not through words or treaties, but through action, through humans bleeding beside aliens, working toward a common goal. Two species separated by biology, by background, by all the things that usually divided sentient beings, united in that moment by the simple choice to do what was right. The complex work of repairing the Valarian ion drive pushed both crews to their limits. The repairs required precision that could only be achieved through external work in the harsh vacuum surrounding the alien ship. Lieutenant Brandon Cole suited up for the third time in as many days, his body aching with exhaustion, but his resolve unwavering. His team consisted of 6 of the best engineers the Vanguard had. Specialists trained for the most dangerous work in space. The Arques supervised from the Valarian side, coordinating with Cole through communication channels that had to be maintained constantly. The alien scientists marveled at human capability for sustained focus and dangerous work. At least half of what the humans were attempting would be considered suicidal by Valarian standards, yet they did it anyway because they understood that the mission required it. The ion drive had suffered catastrophic damage when the ship passed through the spatial anomaly. The reactor that powered it had overloaded, then partially shut itself down to prevent complete failure. But the shutdown had created feedback loops in the crystalline matrices that stored and regulated power. These matrices were deteriorating faster than anyone had anticipated, and they had to be stabilized and replaced before the drive could function again. Patrick Marcus worked alongside Cole, his young face set in concentration as he made minute adjustments to the delicate power couplings. The work required absolute precision. One wrong movement could trigger a cascade failure that would damage the entire reactor. The radiation environment made it dangerous, even with protective suits. The suits could only shield so much before the accumulated exposure began affecting human physiology inside the Vanguard. Dr. Lara Mitchell monitored every team member, continuously watching for signs of radiation sickness, watching for equipment failures, watching for the dozen ways that this work could go wrong. Her medical team was on standby, prepared for emergency evacuation and treatment if needed. 72 hours into the intensive repair work, the complications began. A reactor feedback surge forced the teams to abort their external work and return to the safety of the ships while the Valarian engineers worked to stabilize the reactor from inside. Only 8 hours remained before the crystalline matrices would fail beyond any possibility of repair. Cole and his team reassessed the situation huddled in the airlock of the Vanguard. Their suits still hot from the external environment. Dr. Chen brought them the updated calculations from Kess. The Valarian scientist had found a way to complete the repairs, but it required simultaneous work on 3 separate sections of the drive. The humans would have to work faster and more efficiently than they had been, and they would have to do it under even harsher radiation conditions. "We can do this," Cole said to his team with more confidence than he actually felt. "But I will not order anyone to go back out there. The risk is significant, and I will not force anyone to choose potential death for an alien species if anyone wants to sit this out. No judgment from me." Every single person in that airlock volunteered to return to the work. This was not bravery in the traditional sense. It was something deeper, a fundamental human instinct to help others, even when it cost them greatly, even when it might cost them everything. The second wave of external work was harder, more desperate. The teams worked with the kind of focus that only true emergency can create. Every motion, exact every connection made with absolute precision. Patrick Marcus was in the most exposed position, working on the reactor itself, where radiation levels were highest. His radiation counter was ticking upward faster than optimal levels, but he did not pull back. He kept working, kept focusing, kept pushing himself beyond what should have been safe. Then the moment everyone had feared arrived. A tempt section of the drive's housing began to give way under the stress of the failed reactor. One of Marcus's support struts was beginning to collapse. If it failed completely, the young engineer would fall into the damaged drive assembly and into exposure that no suit could survive. Cole saw it happening and reacted without thought, without hesitation. He pushed off from his position and moved toward Marcus, using his maneuvering jets to cross the gap quickly. His hands grabbed Marcus's suit and pulled him backward with all his strength. The collapse continued, and a section of sharp, metallic debris tore through Marcus's suit, creating a breach that would be fatal within minutes. Cole dragged Marcus back toward the airlock, even as the younger engineer tried to signal that he should continue working, that the mission was too important. Cole would have none of it. He sealed the damaged area of Marcus's suit with an emergency patch and pushed them both toward the airlock with urgency that bordered on panic behind them. Two other engineers saw what had happened, and instead of evacuating, they completed the final connection on the third and final section of repairs. The mission required work in all three sections simultaneously, and those two engineers finished their work even as their teammate was being carried back through space with catastrophic suit damage. They did not hesitate, they did not slow down. They completed the task because their companion had sacrificed to give them the chance. Dar Mitchell was waiting in the airlock when they arrived. Marcus was unconscious, bleeding from the wound where the debris had penetrated, and the radiation exposure was reaching critical levels. The doctor worked with stunning speed and focus as her medical team supported her. She applied pressure to the wound, compensated for the radiation exposure, and got Marcus into the medical bay within critical minutes. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Captain Hayes watched the readouts, hoping, praying in whatever way a modern human could that the repairs would work, that the sacrifice would not be in vain. And then the Valarian ship's reactor began to stabilize. The readings showed normalization across all systems. The ion drive began responding to power inputs. The repairs had worked. Captain Arya received the report on her bridge, and she understood immediately what had happened. One of the human engineers had sacrificed himself to save a teammate, and in doing so had nearly died. One of her crew had been rescued by a stranger who valued his life as much as his own. Her entire worldview was shifting based on what she was witnessing. The Valarian drive came online fully, and the ship that had been slowly dying in the darkness suddenly felt alive again. Power flowed through her systems, the lights brightened. The atmosphere processors hummed with renewed purpose. The crew erupted in celebration, but Captain Arya only thought of the human lying in a medical bay, fighting for his life, when she learned that Patrick Marcus had survived, that Dr. Mitchell had somehow pulled him back from the edge of death, and that he would likely make a complete recovery. Arya felt something she had not felt in weeks. Hope was no longer a distant concept or a desperate prayer. It was real, tangible, immediate. She moved through her ship and then over to the Vanguard, where she stood in the medical bay, looking at the young human who had nearly died for her people. Captain Hayes was already there, standing beside Marcus's medical bed. "He's going to live," Hayes said, understanding why she had come. "Yes," Arya replied, "because your people found him more important than their own survival, than the danger they faced. They saved him knowing he was injured, knowing he could not continue with the mission. They chose him over the task. That is what humans do." Hayes said simply, "We take care of our own. We take care of each other." "And now," Arya said slowly as understanding bloomed fully in her mind, "you have taken care of my people as well. You have made us part of your owning that medical bay. 2 species and 2 civilizations took a step towards something unprecedented, something that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The cost had been high, but the reward was immeasurable. 2 ships traveled together through the darkness of space, moving with purpose and hope. The Valarian vessel was no longer dying, but fully operational with its systems, humming smoothly alongside the human warship that had become its unlikely savior. The journey back toward known space would take another 3 weeks, and in that time, something remarkable was happening. The crews were becoming not just colleagues in rescue, but friends. Patrick Marcus was released from medical confinement. After 2 weeks of intensive recovery, his body bore the scars of his encounter with the damaged drive, but his spirit was unbroken. Dr. Mitchell had warned him that the radiation exposure could have long-term effects, but for now he was healthy and mobile. He was immediately sought out by members of the Valarian crew, who wanted to thank him personally, who wanted to understand what had driven him to continue working, even as his suit was failing. The young engineer found himself in common areas with alien beings, studying their features, marveling at how different life could be, yet how similar fundamental principles remained. They all valued their crews. They all felt fear. They all understood sacrifice on the bridge. Captain Hayes and Captain Arya spent considerable time together planning the next phase of their journey. The 2 commanders had developed a respect that transcended their biological differences. They discussed the future of relations between their species, the possibility of trade and cultural exchange, the simple but profound ways that 2 civilizations could learn from each other. I have been reviewing the reports from your crew, Arya said during one of their private meetings. The accounts of your rescue efforts are extraordinary. Your people risked their lives for mine, with no guarantee of reward, no contractual obligation, no binding agreement. In human culture, we call it doing the right thing. Hayes replied, "It is not a strategic calculation. It is a moral principle that comes from within. This concept is foreign to my people." Arya admitted, "We understand survival. We understand expansion. We understand resource acquisition. But we do not understand self-sacrifice for strangers with no tangible benefit. Perhaps it is time your people learned." Hayes said with a gentle smile, "Your galaxy has been defined by competition and power struggles. What if it could be defined by compassion instead? What if helping others became a value in itself as the ships prepared for the final approach to the Thali rendezvous point, where the Valarian vessel would separate and return to collective space? Hayes and Arya planned a joint ceremony. Both crews would gather together, humans and Valarians standing side by side, to mark what had transpired between them. The ceremony took place in the large cargo bay of the Vanguard, converted for the occasion, with both species seated together. The humans had decorated the space with banners and flowers, a celebration of survival and hope. The Valarians had contributed their own ceremonial elements, creating a fusion of cultures that seemed impossible. Just weeks before Captain Arya approached Captain Hayes before the gathered crew of both species, standing tall, though the artificial gravity made her feel heavier than her own world. A message of great importance needed to be delivered, and it had to come from her. "When we detected your ship approaching, we were afraid." Arya began, her voice carrying through the bay, translated for all to hear. "We did not know if you would help or harm us, if you would demand payment or try to control us. But you asked for nothing. You offered everything. We have learned something profound in these weeks." She paused, looking at her crew, and then at the humans before continuing. "In all recorded history of the Valarian collective, no species has helped us without expectation of gain. No one has sacrificed for us without contract or alliance agreement. Your people have rewritten everything we believed about how advanced civilizations interact with each other." Arya turned to Hayes with formal dignity. "I speak now as captain of my people and as a representative of the Valarian collective. I declare that humanity has earned the respect, alliance, and friendship of our civilization. We accept you not as subjects or competitors, but as equals, as friends, as beings, worthy of our trust and cooperation. The applause began quietly, then grew louder, filling the cargo bay. It came from humans and Valerians, both understanding that something monumental had just occurred. A new chapter in galactic history was opening before them later that evening as final preparations were made. For separation, Marcus found himself standing with Cole, watching the Valerian ship through the observation windows. The alien vessel that had been so close to death was now vibrant and whole, ready to journey home with news that would change everything new. Realize they are going to ask us why we did this, right? Marcus said to Cole, when they report back to their leaders, they will want to understand the strategic value. Cole smiled. I hope they understand that sometimes the strategy is simply to be human. Sometimes doing the right thing is enough in the days. Before separation, Captain Hayes and Captain Arya exchanged formal documentation of their meeting and cooperation. Letters of commendation were written, scientific data was shared, cultural information was exchanged, but more importantly, promises were made to meet again, to continue this friendship, to see where it could lead. Commander Rodriguez approached Hayes on the bridge 2 days before the separation was scheduled to occur. The tactical officer had become one of the rescue effort's strongest supporters. His initial skepticism transformed through watching the Valerian crew's gratitude and loyalty. Sir, I believe your decision to help them has changed our entire future, Rodriguez said with genuine conviction. In choosing compassion over caution, we may have gained the greatest ally humanity could ask for. Simply believed it was right, Hayes replied. But I am pleased you agree. The night before the vessels would separate, Marcus attended a final gathering with his Valerian counterparts. The aliens had learned to consume human food, and humans had tried some Valerian cuisine. The experiments had been mixed, but the effort was what mattered. The crews celebrated together, sharing stories of the rescue mission, laughing together despite the translation systems, sometimes struggling with humor and context. Early the next morning, both ships positioned themselves for final separation, but before they parted ways, both captains transmitted final messages to each other. This encounter will not be forgotten. Arya's message began, I return to my people carrying knowledge that will reshape how we see the universe. I carry the understanding that there are beings out there who help without calculation, who sacrifice without expectation. We will remember you. We will remember the humans of the USEC Vanguard, who showed us that compassion is not weakness, but the highest form of strength. Hayes recorded his response carefully. I will carry the memory of your people and this mission with me for the rest of my life. When humanity faces challenges, we will remember that we have friends in the Valerian collective, and that sometimes the greatest victories come not from weapons, but from human hearts that choose to help. The Valerian ship engaged its drive and began to move away from the Vanguard. The human vessel maintained position, watching as their temporary companions disappeared into the darkness of space, heading home to change their entire civilization with the news of what they had encountered. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They had done the right thing. They had helped those in need, and now humanity had a new place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or competitors, but as beings who had chosen compassion. The USEC Vanguard adjusted its course back toward human space, carrying a crew forever changed by what they had experienced. Out in the darkness of the universe, a message was being transmitted, spreading news of human kindness, human sacrifice, human hope. And soon the entire galaxy would know about the humans who helped without hesitation, who saved without expectation. And the vastness of space, two civilizations had met and found something precious, something that might light the darkness, not with weapons, but with the warmth of genuine connection and the power of choosing to help those in need.